or underestimated. Rolling Stone magazine gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4. Said it should have been given 3 X's. Went on to say, strangest of all, reviewers felt the movie ended on a high note. That's a key point. Many people thought the movie was uplifting. Time magazine, for instance, wrote that Precious makes an utterly believable and electrifying rise from an urban abyss of ignorance and neglect. And at the Cannes Film Festival in France, the mostly white audience gave Precious a 15-minute standing ovation. Sexual abuse is certainly an equal opportunity crime, with black and white women similarly affected. But only exaggerated black depravity seems to resonate so forcefully in the imagination. We're not saying nobody else does it, but nobody else's story is amplified like our story has been amplified for the world. Critical thinking, analyze everything you see, wonder why it is there, and more importantly, understand the effects that it has on you and young, impressionable people who don't have the analytical skills that you may have. Let's look at another review. Armand White, New York Press. Precious is worse than Norbit. Now, I thought Norbit was bad, but he said Precious is worse than Norbit. Shame on Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey for signing on as executive producers of Precious. Winfrey, Perry, and Daniels make an unholy triumvirate. They come together at some intersection of race, exploitation, and opportunism. These two media titans, plus one shrewd pathology pimp, use Precious to rework Booker T. Washington's early 20th century manifesto, Up From Slavery, into extreme drama for the new millennium, up from incest, child abuse, teenage pregnancy, poverty, and AIDS. Regardless of its narrative details about class and gender, Precious is an orgy of purulence. Not since The Birth of a Nation has a mainstream movie demeaned the idea of black American life as much as Precious. Full of brazenly racist cliches, it is a sociological horror show offering racist hysteria masquerading as social sensitivity. It has been acclaimed in the international festival circuit that usually disdains movies about black Americans as somehow inartistic and unworthy. They ignore us until they get this trash, and then they praise it and put it on the pedestal. We need to understand why. We need to understand why. And so, these are just the good reviews, all right? There are a lot of folk who said a lot of negative things, well, not negative, but honest things about the film. So Precious is one of those movies that divided viewers into 2 camps. Those who loved it or those who loved to hate it. Now, I'm not one who's prone to hate, but I want you to know that I really, really, really dislike this film. After watching it, my wife and I went to the theater to see it, and after watching the film, I felt as if we had just paid $20 to be spiritually assaulted and demoralized. It left me empty.
Right, it did.
And I asked myself, why would someone put this trash on the scene for the world to see and think that it was entertainment? I've seen some disgusting films in my life, but I've never seen a depiction of black life that was so savagely portrayed. It was as if the KKK created the most offensive depiction of black life and called it the afterbirth of a nation and told the world, this is what we really are like. And I'll be the first to admit that I am sensitive. I'm overly sensitive when it comes to the portrayal of black folk, particularly black men in the media, because I'm tired of seeing us degraded. And I do have high standards. I demand to see the best because we've been seeing I've been seeing trash all my life. And now I want to see the scales balance. I want to see some positive portrayal. There's an interesting person that I'm going to talk about at the end of my presentation by the name of Tom Burrell, who is a African-American media executive. And he gives us a process, makes a suggestion as to how we should use Precious. He says that a film like Precious provides us with an unprecedented teachable moment and a reminder that none of us can afford to abandon our critical thinking capabilities. We have to talk about what we like, and we have to talk about what we don't like. We have to be able to articulate why we like certain things and why we dislike certain things so that we can understand what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. I want to share with you some of the more offensive scenes from the film. And then I'm going to analyze those scenes so that you can see just how sick Lee Daniels is. And for those of us who are defenders of the culture, we have to do these things so that we can hold people like him accountable for the garbage that they produce. The first scene that I want to share with you is actually the first scene in the film. It's the opening of the film. And it's a short depiction of Susan Taylor in the first of several fantasy sequences in the film that Precious has. And when I saw this scene of Susan Taylor, you know, I like Susan Taylor, you know, so when I saw this scene, I said, all right, if Susan Taylor's in it, it's going to be all right. You know, so I let my guard down for a minute. And he blindsided me. Lee Daniels blindsided me. And I won't do that again. So let me share the clip, and then I'll explain the symbolism in this clip. Scarf. And that orange scarf became symbolic of the pain that she was going through and the healing that is required in order for her to restore her soul. So you saw that orange scarf at specific scenes, in the film, and then toward the end of the film, Precious takes the scarf off of her neck and gives it to this young child who we saw earlier in the movie who is being abused. So she is helping to pass on the protection, the healing that was love, the love that was given to her, she's now giving it to somebody else. That's one of the few positive scenes in this film. But what I like about Susan Taylor is that I've always respected many of the things that she's done. I found her to be a very spiritual woman. And last summer I had the occasion of being in her presence at a conference that I attend every year in Tennessee. The Children's Defense Fund has a training program that they do for thousands of college students who come from all over the United States for a week of training, and I do several workshops for them. And Susan Taylor was one of the keynote speakers during the course of the week that we were there. And she gave an address where she held about 15 college students, held them in the palm of her hand, and she talked about her life story. She talked about an early relationship she had with a man, and when that man abused her. And she packed her bags and she left. And she talked about the fact that many people stay in abusive relationships because they believe that they are worthy of that abuse. And that no person deserves to be treated bad. No person deserves to be hit. No person deserves to be talked about. And when that happens, you should leave. In most instances, people who are abusers were abused themselves. And then she made a 4-word statement that stuck with me, that just resonated with every cell in my body. She said, hurt people hurt people. People who have been hurt in their lives have a tendency to hurt others that they say they love. And so the minute anybody hurts you, you should pack your bags and leave.